Welcome back to the lesson. Today we are going to learn a different way to handle the movements of the bee. We saw last time that there is a limitation in the way the movement is being handled. The bee runs out of the screen if it gets hit. That happens because we are using a timeout to control the movement, and that timeout is reset as soon as the bee gets hit, or as soon as we change the state. We want to get rid of that timeout. There are different ways to solve the problem. I'll present one of them. It's simple. We can think of the movement of the bee in terms of duration or in terms of distance. We can say that the boss should move from one side to the other during 3 seconds. That's what we've been doing so far. Or we can say that the boss should move from one side to the other for 360 pixels. These ways of thinking are equivalent. If the bee moves at a constant speed of 120 pixels per second, then in 3 seconds it moves 360 pixels. So let's think in terms of distance. Here is the x-axis. Suppose that the initial position of the bee is x0. It starts at the right side of the arena. It should move 360 pixels to the left before stopping. So let's say that the point where it should stop is called x1. After resting for a little while, it should move 360 pixels to the right, back to x0. It's clear that x0 is equal to x1 plus 360, or equivalently, that x1 is equal to x0 minus 360. The distance between x0 and x1 is 360 pixels. If we know x0, then we also know x1. Now suppose that the bee is moving to the left. Let's say that the x position of the bee is called x. If x is less than or equal to x1, the final position, then we know that the bee should stop. Conversely, suppose that the bee is moving to the right. If x is greater than or equal to x0, the initial position, then the bee should also stop. With this logic, we can get rid of the timers completely. In order to read the position of the bee, we import the transform component to the script. We write using search engine.transform at the top of the script. The transform lets us position, rotate, and scale objects. It's a super useful tool to create special effects. You can read the search script documentation to know more about it. In this lesson, we are just going to use it to read the position of the boss. Okay, so let's create a new variable called moveLength and set it to 360. That's the length of the movement, 360 pixels. Let's also create a new variable called initialX and set it to 0 initially. That will be the initial position of the bee, the x0 we saw earlier. Finally, let's create a new variable called finalX and again set it to 0 initially. That will be the x1 we saw earlier. Since we are no longer using time to control the movement, we can erase the moveTime variable. In state main, let's set initialX to transform.position.x. Transform.position.x is the x position of the bee in word space. Let's also set finalX to initialX minus moveLength. Let me also remove that collider.visible line. We no longer need to display the collider. In state moving left, instead of relying on a timeout, we're going to check if the x position of the bee is less than or equal to the final position. That's the condition we saw earlier, if x is less than or equal to x1. So we write if transform.position.x is less than or equal to finalX. If that is true, then the bee should stop. We should then change the state to resting left. In state moving right, we will drop that timeout and instead check if the x position of the bee is greater than or equal to the initial position. So let's write if transform.position.x is greater than or equal to initial x. If that is true, then the bee should stop and we should change the state to resting right. Okay, now the movement is controlled by the position of the bee and not by a timeout. Let's see what we get. Save the file and open the engine. Well, I forgot to create the transform variable. It should store the transform component that we have imported. Let's create it now. Okay. Yeah, now we can hit the bee as many times as we'd like and it doesn't get off path. The problem is solved. So that's what I wanted to cover today. One limitation of this boss is that it doesn't attack the player. We want to spice things up by making it shoot a ball of energy. We will begin to see a boss fight take shape.